This is the Bigger Pockets podcast, show 466.
One rental property can really change your life, but if you want to do 2 or 3, a lot of people get scared because they're like, I don't want to be a real estate mogul. I'm not, trying to be Monopoly man. And I'm like, you don't need to. You just buy a couple, or just start with one, and you're going to see how it changes your life and your finances. And, you're going to get the bug like the rest of us. Everyone, who listens to this podcast probably knows what that feeling is. And then you just grow from there, and it just becomes a passion.
You're listening to Bigger Pockets Radio, simplifying real estate for investors large and small. If you're here looking to learn about real estate investing without all the hype, you're in the right place. Stay tuned and be sure to join the millions of others who have benefited from BiggerPockets.com, your home for real estate investing online.
What's going on, everyone? It's Brandon Turner, host of the Bigger Pockets podcast, here with my co-host, Mr. David Green. David Green, I got no good nickname for you today. What's up, man? How you doing?
There is no better nickname than your best friend and your co-host. I love this job.
My best friend in the entire world, David Green, here on the podcast again. Man, it has been a crazy few weeks, I know, for you on closings, and me, I'm closing like next week on my condo here. So real estate's rocking right now, huh?
I closed on 2 condos in Hawaii. I'm closing tomorrow on a retail center in Minnesota.
Ooh.
I am hiring an office manager for my real estate team. I've got like 10 agents that are all ready to crush it, and we just need someone with a little bit of experience to help train them. The loan business is going well. It's frankly just a good time to work in real estate, right? You got to make hay when the sun shines, because it won't always be that way forever.
Let me ask you a question, though, completely unrelated. Then we'll get into today's show, which was phenomenal, by the way. I can't wait to bring you guys this show. But what do you think of crypto right now? It's crazy. It's all over the news. It's all everyone's talking about is crypto. What's your crypto thoughts in 30 seconds or less? Go.
My thoughts are they have more to do with the way that the government's just creating stimulus. They're not printing dollar bills, but they're buying bonds, and that's pushing money in the economy. And it's like pushing water under the surface of the earth, and it has to bubble up somewhere. So people are losing confidence in the dollar, and you're seeing asset-based inflation is kind of running rampant. So real estate obviously is going up in value, but you also see NFTs, crypto, baseball cards, kind of weird stuff you wouldn't normally expect to see this being influenced by this water as it bubbles up, and it has to find somewhere to go. So I think that as long as there's a scare of the overall strength of the dollar, things like crypto are going to do really well. And if that shifts, you'll see that stop really fast.
Are you buying any?
Because I only invest in things I understand.
Very smart. Very smart. I did buy $5,000 worth of Bitcoin back when it was much lower, and now it's worth, I don't know, like 20,000 or something like that. But I literally bought it as a lottery ticket. Like, I was like, this is fun money. This is like play money. I might lose the whole thing. It might go to 0, but it might go to $1 million. So it was an asymmetric bet. It was kind of like, it could go really significantly higher or not. That said, speaking of lottery tickets, today's show, our guest today is Alan Corey, and Alan brought up a really great term in today's show. I want you guys to listen for it when we get to that point, where he talks about like the imaginary lottery ticket, I think is what he called it. Is that right? And that whole concept was so good. We talk a lot about that. We talk a lot about risk. We talk about paying off debt. Should you pay off credit card debt, student loan debt before investing? We talk about that. We talk about, should you become a real estate agent to invest in, to get started? We have a lot of good stuff there. I mean, he made $1 million on one. Actually, I think he told me 3 times in his life, and we covered 2 of those stories today, where he made over $1 million on one deal. So you're going to learn about a couple of those today, and they're not like that crazy. Like, it's stuff that anybody here could probably pull off. So that and more to come. But first, let's get to today's quick tip. Today's quick tip is nice and simple. I put together I don't have a title for it yet. We'll have one here shortly. But I put together an interview with a CPA who specializes in taxes for real estate investors, and an attorney who specializes in asset protection for real estate investors. And I put together this a little over an hour long. It's like an hour and 15 minutes. Sit down, and we cover everything on this video. That is a new BiggerPockets Pro perk. So if you are an existing Pro member, make sure you go into your Pro membership. I think it's like go to your picture on the corner, drop down, and you'll find all your Pro perks in there. That's a perk in there. And also, if you become a BiggerPockets Pro member in the future, you'll get that video as well. So that's your quick tip. Check it out. And remember, if you're watching this video on YouTube right now, don't forget to like this video, hit the little thumbs up button, subscribe to the BiggerPockets channel, and leave a comment below if you have questions for us or the guest, specifically Alan Corey. Ask him down below in the comment section. We love to see the YouTube channel growing. So if you're watching this here, let us know. All right. With that said, I think it's time to get into today's show. Anything you want to add before I introduce the man, the myth, the legend, Alan Corey? Anything?
No, but this was a good one. I had a lot of fun with this recording. I think we got into a lot of life stuff, not just real estate, but the real estate stuff we talked about absolutely applies to the life stuff we talked about. I thought this came out great.
Yeah, agreed. Without further ado, let's get into the interview with Alan Corey. All right, so today's show, we have Alan Corey. Alan was a huge inspiration in my life for real estate investing. I read one of his books early on, and that really spurred me on toward the financial independence. And in fact, the book was called $1 Million by 30. And so I was like, all right, that's a good goal. So I set a goal of $1 Million by 30. And at 30 years old, I crossed the $1 million mark. So that was cool. Interesting enough, he has been on, I think, 6 reality TV shows. We'll probably talk about that today, including Queer Eye for the Straight Guy. He was one of the people being looked over there. Longtime investor, real estate agent, started in Brooklyn, over 100 deals, once had dreadlocks, and a lot more. So you're going to hear more about Alan today. But that said, let's bring him in. Alan Corey, it is an honor and a long time coming. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks. I appreciate it. This has been a goal of mine, is to be on your show. So I feel like I've achieved something. It's like buying a new house. Also, I told way too many people that I was the best guest you've ever had. I really kind of 10x'd my appearance today, so I've got to live up to that. Yeah,
this is great. Oh, I like your prophesying. You just know it's going to be amazing. So we got this. We got this. All right. So I want to start with the most important question of all. It really like gets to the heart of who you are. Reality TV. What the heck is that about? Jerry Springer, Queer Eye for the Straight Guy. Where did this stuff come from? Like, where'd that life come from?
I moved to New York right after college. This was 20 years ago, a different lifetime ago. I don't even really recognize that person that I saw on TV. But I wanted to be a stand-up comic, and that's sort of like when reality TV was sort of new and sort of a new thing. And so they go cast real people is what they call it, but really they just cast comedians to be on the show if you're a male, and then if you're a female, they'll go to the modeling agencies and cast from there. So that's sort of my way on to TV, and I got to tell you, I make way more money in real estate investing than I did as a reality TV show guest. Yeah, I can
definitely see that. So if you guys want to see Alan with dreadlocks, and we got him on Jerry Springer and all this stuff, go check out. We'll actually put a link in the show notes. That what show number is this? BiggerPockets.com/show 466. So check it out there. We'll put a link. Also, you can just go to YouTube and search Alan Corey.
One of the times they filmed 2 shows. I was on The Restaurant with Rocco DiSpirito as a waiter, immediately followed by being made over on Queer Eye for the Straight Guy as a real estate investor. So I got a lot of hate mail when they had 2 shows back to back. One
That's funny.
where I was working for pennies, and the other where I was making some dough flipping home. So
are you saying that TV is not 100% accurate, Alan? Don't burst my bubble here.
All I got to say is when I was doing this 20 years ago, it was I was playing a part in some ways. Yeah,
I hear you. All right,
it might have changed. Yeah.
So how did that lead into, for those who haven't read $1 Million by 30 or the new book, which is, I got it right here, House Fire, so you can achieve financial independence and retire early, which is phenomenal. How did you get into real estate? Like, why real estate? What was your first entrance?
Yeah, so I was in the clubs performing every single night from about midnight to 3 a.m. And then during the day, I was working as a tech support guy 9 to 5. And I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't, because I was just always working either at my day job or in the clubs. And I was like, I've got to focus on comedy full time. I'll never be able to live this dream. And so I bought every single book that I could on financial independence and retiring early and wealth creation and working for yourself. And I just gravitated to the real estate books and just kept reading those and like, oh, this makes sense. If I buy a couple properties, if I'm a landlord, I'll have some cash flow and that I can quit my day job and I can focus on comedy the full time. And by the end of the hour here, you'll understand why my comedy career didn't work out as you get to know me. But I fell in love with real estate more than comedy. So I kept my day job, and then I started doing real estate at nights and the weekends, and just eventually made the switch to doing that full time after acquiring a few properties and haven't looked back.
Yeah. So what was the very first deal you did?
So the very first one, bought a property in Brooklyn, New York for $99,000. I was living in Spanish Harlem at the time. I had never been to Brooklyn. I had $10,000 in my account, and I was like, there's 10% down payment. I need to buy something for $100,000. And there was 0 apartments for $100,000, even back in 2001, 2002 when I was looking. But there was one property for $110,000, and I said, you know what? I got to get them down to $100,000 or below, and I'm buying this property. I go over there, I show up for the first time, get off the subway. There's a guy sleeping on the doorstep, asking me for money, telling me some story about how he just got out of jail. And, most people would be like, maybe this is not the best primary residence or the best neighborhood. But to me, I'm like, hey, this is all I can afford. I'm buying it. And it was a 1-bedroom apartment. I hung up a very heavy curtain in the living room, and I called that a second bedroom, got a roommate, and house hacked my first apartment. And then I started house hacking every 12 months after that, and bought a duplex down the street eventually after that. And then it just sort of, I had a goal. I was going to buy one property every 12 months. And I did that for 5 straight years, and now I try to buy multiple properties every 12 months. Yeah.
All right. So let's dig in. $1 million by 30. So how did you get? We'll start with that one. It's your much older book now. But how did you become a millionaire at 30?
Well, so it was a combination. It was really before the FIRE movement, but it was really the lean FIRE principles, which is FIRE stands for Financial Independence, Retire Early. I lived on 39% of my $50,000 salary, and I invested the rest. I was in 401k matches, the IRAs contributions, but really saving up for down payments. And the big catalyst was my second purchase, that duplex, which was also in Brooklyn, and 3 bedrooms on each side. And I rented it out to 5 comedians. I lived there, and I had 5 comedians, each paying $600 to $750 a month. We called it the House of Clowns. And I was, once that second property, I had all my mortgage covered, and I was profiting $2,000 a month in cash flow, and that was more than my day job. So that allowed me to quit my day job just after my second house hack.
And that actually just speaks to the value of house hacking, right? I mean, David, you and I talk a lot about this, and Alan, your book talks a lot about it. I mean, just the idea of you don't need 500 properties to be able to quit your job and retire early. Like if you do it right, if you live inexpensively and you buy a house hack, you could potentially do it right away, right?
Yeah, and that's what my newest book. And as a realtor and my clients, I outlay just one rental property can really change your life. But if you want to do 2 or 3, a lot of people get scared because they're like, I don't want to be a real estate mogul. I'm not, trying to be monopoly man. And I'm like, you don't need to. You just buy a couple, or just start with one, and you're going to see how it changes your life and your finances. And, you're going to get the bug like the rest of us. Everyone, who listens to this podcast probably knows what that feeling is. And then you just grow from there, and it just becomes a passion.
Something I really like, Alan, about what you talk about is it's sort of making the connection between a practical thing in your life, like a bill, a mortgage, an internet bill, a car payment, and investing. And you've really created this cool reward system where you tie the hard work that goes into saving for a property, going through the process of finding it, closing on it, and having cash flow with rewarding yourself that you've now eliminated a bill for the rest of your life because you tied that cash flow to that bill. Can you expand a little bit on how that works and how you found success helping create that link in people's minds?
Yeah, sure. So the FIRE sort of method is you want to save up 25 years of whatever expenses are in your life. So say you have a $150 internet bill, multiply that by 12, that's $1,800 a year. The FIRE method and rules are, and the 4% rule is, hey, take 25 years of that, which is $45,000. And if you just put that in stocks and do a safe withdrawal rate of 4% every single year, you'll have that internet bill covered for the rest of your year. And then you do that for every single bill in your life. I take the real estate approach and I say, wait a minute, I don't want to save up $45,000 before I retire. How about I take $25,000 and go buy a $100,000 property that cash flows me $150 a month? And then so once I do that, I tie every single cash flow. Oh, this house goes to this bill, and $150 I've got free internet and life. And then when this house is paid off, then I can reallocate that $150, which will probably be more like $600 now because I don't have a mortgage, to other bills in my life. And so I did that recently for a car. If I wanted to go buy a Tesla, that's $40,000. Rather than saving up $40,000 and buying a Tesla in all cash, I look online and say, okay, wait a minute, this is going to be a $500 mortgage payment. Why don't I take $40,000 and go buy a house in all cash, or leverage a house, buy a $250,000 house with that $40,000 payment that cash flows me $500, and pretty much, that's House Fire, my new book, where it's just every bill in your life. Let's go buy a property and pay that for the rest of my life. And what's great about it is the older I get, and I'm not living on a budget. Every other retirement plan has you living on a budget. This one, my budget gets bigger every year because properties go down. I'm paying off the principal every year. My rent, that I charge goes up every year, and they appreciate in value. And instead of giving $40,000 to a car company, I'm giving $40,000 to myself in terms of equity in a home. And it's just recycling the money. And it's, like you said, a mindset where, any toy I want in my life, any expense in my life, I get a house to pay for it.
Here's a few points I love about what you're saying. First off, if you're bad at saving, this is even better for you. Because if you're not good at saving and you force yourself to buy real estate, especially if it's cash flowing real estate, you're never going to run out of money. You literally can't go spend the 40 grand that you put down on that property because it's tucked away in something that's getting you a return. Second thing is that you can't run out of money like this. Because as long as the property's cash flowing, when you buy that car, it's not like you decided, do I want a house or a car? You got both. You got a house that paid for a car. When that car is paid off, you can go buy another car, right? You will always have a car for the rest of your life. Another thing is that certain things that we like to spend money on, there's this trade-off between what I want and what I know is best. It's the whole broccoli or ice cream thing. Typically, a really nice car, nice clothes, a vacation feels a little bit like ice cream. Investing in bonds or real estate feels like broccoli. Well, when you're buying depreciating assets like a car or clothes or whatever with real estate, it limits the damage it can do to you because your initial investment continues to appreciate while the stuff that you bought with it can go down. And then last that I love is that when rates are really low like this, I think a guy on my team just bought himself. He's been a loan officer with me for 6 months or so, and he's doing really well. He just bought himself a Tesla S. Is that the expensive one, Brandon?
Yeah. The X is probably more, right? But
okay, maybe it was the X. His car payment's $850 a month. It's a lot for a young person. However, the price of the car versus the actual payment is really not as bad as what I was expecting when I heard how much the car was. So when rates are low like this and you're borrowing money to buy something that typically we wouldn't advise you to, like an expensive car, you're getting more car for the money is basically what I'm getting at. And then every year that what you're getting in cash flow theoretically is going up, so that even if the car is going down in value, you're still not losing money. So there's a ton of ways that what you're talking about makes so much sense. And I wish every young person would hear this. Is you start off buying all these assets, and then your assets fund the fun stuff you want. Brandon, you have anything to add there?
Well, I was going to point out that that's what I did with my Tesla Model X. Is the payment was going to be like $900 a month. And so for years, I wanted one. I mean, for several years, I was like, oh, I want a Tesla. But I told myself I refuse, even though maybe I could have afforded the payment, but I just refused to buy it until I had an asset buy it for me. So then I went and bought this triplex here in Maui back a year and a half ago. And the thing produced like $2,000 a month in cash flow. I was like, all right, there we go. So then I bought the Tesla. And then I flipped a house. I made 45 grand. So I went and bought a Tesla Model 3 just in cash for my wife. And so both of those were assets or business, whatever. So I didn't get sucked into that lifestyle early on. I mean, and this goes back to the whole fire thing. And I want to dig in this a little bit more, Alan, is like, if I, like early on in my career, I said, similar to you, I said, I needed $3,000 a month to be able to quit my job. Like that was my number. It wasn't a lot. I lived in a small town and I was super conservative and cheap. And so I needed $3,000. So I was like, okay, what do I need then? Well, if my average house is making me $100 a month in profit or average unit, I need to see 30 units. And I just went on a quest to go buy 30 units. And I just bought 30 units and I quit my job after that. Like it's not a super complicated thing.
Yeah, it helps with analysis paralysis because I've got a lot of clients and friends who sort of just freeze. And it's easier when you're like, hey, what bill do you want to pay? Okay, you found a house that cash flows you $200 that's going to cover your phone and your water bill or whatever it is, then yeah, pull the trigger, make the offer. Like that, it made the criteria that much easier. And then you just go through your next bill. Like, okay, well, this one pays for your electric bill and the next one's going to pay for your water bill. But hey, we made progress, and let's just keep the ball rolling, the momentum going, the flywheel, it just sort of feeds upon itself after a while, and it becomes fun. And then once you run out of bills, you have to invent bills like Tesla payments. Yeah.
Exactly. Then you just got to buy more. Yeah, you got to do more and more. Which again goes back to your point. Is that's great is if you can start from this position of like living low, like low expenses. You start there, then you bring the asset up to that level. Then you can rise the two together for indefinitely. I mean, then you can move to Hawaii and have a $2 million house and 2 Teslas and all this cool stuff. And now I didn't like when people see that of my life today and they like, I look like just the typical rich guy. Like the reason I'm here is because I lived in an alleyway in a duplex that I house hacked and I lived for free. And then as I made more and more and more money over the last 10, 15 years, I've been able to rise to that. And so I think people see the outcome, they see the social media and they see the fancy cars and houses, but then they try to go and get that lifestyle before they have the asset to pay for it. And that traps them to a job they don't like for the rest of their life.
And for those in that position right now, you might have student loan debt, you might have a car note. I'm anti-paying those off. I'm like, you can save up the $25,000, $50,000 to pay off your student loans. Go save it up and buy a house that covers that student loan payment. Because what's going to happen in 10 years, you're going to have that loan paid off and have a house that's 1/3 paid off. Or you can just pay it off and then you're starting from zero, saving money again. And it's going to be another 10 years before you save enough to go buy a house. So just sort of get off the sidelines, go buy a house to pay off whatever debts you have right now, rather than paying off the debts, then go buy a house.
And I'll say this is something every single wealthy person, at least that I've come across in my life, they all have it in common. I mean, it's literally just they spent their money on assets. Now, sometimes it's a business. Here, it's often real estate. There's other people that understand different asset classes than us. Some of them even do it well with stocks. But that's what they did. And it creates this incentive structure in your brain. Like, that's what I do. I basically look at all the money I make goes into real estate. What comes out of real estate typically goes back into another form of real estate, right? So I make money and I put it into flipping houses or buying short-term rentals, and I take the cash flow from those things and put it into long-term, safer stuff. What comes out of the end of that funnel is all that David actually makes to live off of. That's how I look at it. That's my real income that's coming in. And I don't even think about the active income that I'm earning. So I think just like you do, Alan, if I want that thing, I've got to get at the end of my funnel enough coming out. And it forces you to be disciplined. It forces you to be creative. It forces you to have a vision for how you're going to make all these pieces work together. But that's all healthy stuff. Isn't that what every great mind that we look at has found a way? Like, how do I get from where I am to where I want? You want to become a great stand-up comedian. You want to be great at fitness. You want to get a great degree from a great school. It's a similar mindset people have. And so I love that you're sharing this message of be disciplined early, buy assets, let assets appreciate, and let them fund the lifestyle you want.
It's really the best way to get on the property ladder. And then another step I'll take that to, if you're thinking about the wealthy mindset, it's really using leverage and mortgages. A lot of people are scared to buy homes and they want to pay them off as soon as possible, pay them in all cash. And the way I look at it is, you're buying a house that you think is going to go up in value possibly, or you think it's a good buy for whatever, criteria you evaluated it. Let's assume you bought a $100,000 house in all cash. Well, if you think that's good, why don't you buy 4 of them, right? Why don't you go buy 4 homes with $25,000 each? It's the same $100,000, and you spread it out across 4 homes. You're actually spreading out risk. You're not creating risk for yourself because, you're getting the home appraised when you buy it with a mortgage. You have a real estate agent typically involved holding your hand. You've got the bank is the most conservative partner you can have. And if they're going to approve it, 1, they think that house is worth the value that you're buying it. 2, they think you can afford that house because they're not going to give you a mortgage if you can't afford that house. And then what happens is 10 years, if the property goes up $10,000 or 10%, instead of making $10,000 on your $100,000 house, you made $40,000 because you have 4 $100,000 houses. If the rent goes up $100, instead of now making $1,100 a month, you're making $1,400 a month or whatever. You're scaling your whatever interest is, whatever your property is. You're scaling your wealth. You're scaling, and I look at it as you're reducing risk while you're scaling your wealth. Which why wouldn't you do it?
Yeah, and that it works in reverse too. When the property loses value, if you put $20,000 into it and it drops $20,000 in value, you've lost 100% technically of your investment. What makes real estate different is typically your cash flow doesn't change when the property loses value. And this, I have a bee in my bonnet over this issue because I hear a lot of equity traders bring up this same fact, and they're like, "Oh, real estate appreciates 3% a year, but I can get you 8% in the stock market." And it's very misleading because you can't take out a mortgage to buy stocks, and stocks don't give you cash flow. They're only looking at an aspect of how real estate builds you wealth, isolating just the appreciation that you see, ignoring the stuff you're saying, like the supercharged leverage that you're getting a better return and the safety that comes from it. You also mentioned another hot button topic I'd like to get into. It's this debate right now that should you pay off all of your debt because there's a crash coming, or should you take on more debt because rates are really low and inflation is coming? And I kind of wanted to throw that question to both you, Alan, and Brandon, where you stand on this controversial topic.
It's not controversial to me. I'm leveraging. I'm trying to get as much debt as long-term debt as possible. I tell everyone, stop making the extra $25, $30 payments on your mortgage payments. Don't round them up. Don't do the biweekly payment program. That just is insane to me. And the way I explain it is, when I walk into an antique store and I see a sign that says like ice cream for a nickel, right? Like when was ice cream a nickel? Apparently that day existed. And due to inflation, ice cream's $3 now, right? So what that $3 ice cream cone in 30 years is going to be $9. So your money is worth has the most purchasing power right now. So you want to go have as much of it as you can in your pocket, not making extra payments on this debt, so that you can accumulate as much money to go buy more debt, buy more assets that have debt. And then what happens is if you have $1,000 mortgage payment over 30 years, it actually gets cheaper over time. You can, instead of paying $3 for an ice cream go down, pay $9 a mortgage with the same, dollar 30 years from now. And you're actually saving money in some regards by spending it in tomorrow's dollars. Money's always going to be worth more today than it is in the future.
So then that ice cream never becomes more expensive for you because you're always paying it with rent that appreciated over time. I like that. I
generally agree. My own personal philosophy, I agree with exactly that. I like leverage. I like debt. I think when you can get debt locked in at 2 or 3%, 4%, 5%, like if you can make more than that, it's a math thing. But like I've talked about on the show before, one of the concepts that changed my thinking a little bit on this is this. There's a book called Life-inaire. It's one of my favorite books, like millionaire with the word life. And they make this concept in there, this idea where if the goal of the game should determine how you play the game. And so if the goal is to quit your job, have financial independence as quick as possible, to become wealthy, which is a lot of people's goals, then if that's the goal, then there are certain rules you play by, like leverage will get you there faster. I think we all believe that if you leverage real estate, you're going to get wealthy faster. If your goal is to reduce all risk in your life and to live the safest life possible and to have minimal chance of ever having a heartache or any risk, then maybe the Dave Ramsey model is better for you. So I guess go ahead.
Well, to me, that's risky. The Dave Ramsey method is risky because if I have 4 homes for that same $100,000, if there's a vacancy, then I'm still getting some cash flow. If I have 1 house and then there's a vacancy, I'm getting 0. How is that not riskier? And also, every property I buy, I say it comes with an imaginary lottery ticket. Right? And that is appreciation that I don't have control of. And I've hit the lottery 3 times on these properties and made $1 million off 3 different properties because I leveraged my money and I just started buying everywhere and spreading out and getting more of these imaginary lottery tickets. I never bought a property because I thought it was going to appreciate. I bought it because it paid a bill. And then apparently, and then if the neighborhood changes, there's a new park going in, something, some new development that I had no insight on, then my wealth tremendously explodes. And that was I can't do that if I'm buying 1 house and 2 and having it paid off. Why don't not turn that into 10 or 20 and have those imaginary lottery tickets?
Yeah, there's another component to this that never gets brought up. And it's the assumption that when you pay off your mortgage, you own it free and clear. But the mortgage is one chunk of the whole pie of what you pay when you own a property, and it's often not even the biggest.
And it's not the biggest. Yeah, it's not the biggest.
And that's what's annoying is they're like, oh, once you pay your property off, you have no expenses. No, not true. You have tax, you have insurance, you have property management, and your freaking expenses and CapEx and maintenance are so much bigger than your mortgage anyway. Go ahead, Brandon.
I don't want to just rip on Dave Ramsey here. I actually like Dave Ramsey for a lot of reasons, but Dave Ramsey's like Instagram the other day had this quote. It said 100% of all foreclosures were with people with mortgages. And I was like, that's not entire. Like, I get what he's saying, but I go to the comments and everyone else calls him out for it too. What about tax foreclosures? What about like all the other reasons you could lose your property? Like primarily taxes or the thing, you don't have insurance on the property. Like there's a lot of things that go into that.
100% of bank foreclosures, you could say. Well, 100% of foreclosures were from homeowners. You can't have a foreclosure unless you have a mortgage to have a bank foreclosure.
If you're buying old rentals, and the market goes down $10,000. I bought a $100,000 house. It's worth $75,000 now. I don't care. My rent doesn't go down 75%. There's a 12-month lease, so there's always a 12-month lag on my leases based on property values. But never, maybe my lease stays the same. But it's not like, if there's a market crash, you actually have more renters because people are losing their homes or people aren't moving or they can't afford a home. And so it creates more renters and more demand. And so to me, I like to spread out my risk, and you do that by buying more properties.
It's like a belay. When you're climbing the mountain and you slip, you'll fall a little bit, but it will catch you. You won't fall all the way to the bottom. That's what cash flowing real estate does. In the stock market, in securities and equities, there is no belay. If you're at $80 a share and it drops to $20 a share in a day or two, there was nothing you could do to stop that. As opposed to real estate, I don't care what it drops to. Even if we have the scenario that hasn't happened in my lifetime where rent was $1,200 and it drops 30% all the way down to $900, maybe I went from cash flowing $200 a month to negative $100 a month. I can probably swing $100 a month. This doesn't get brought up enough when people are comparing these investment vehicles, and so I really appreciate you doing that here.
And that tenant, if you're losing $100 a month, that tenant's probably paying $150 in your principal pay down. So in some ways, you're not losing money. It's just not cash flow. It's future money. You're paying yourself in the future.
Well, let me dive into this topic a little bit deeper that we've been talking about, but debt versus investing. Clearly, I think all three of us, we utilize leverage and debt. And when it comes to 5% student loan debt, 3% student loan debt, mortgages at 3 or 4%, this all makes sense. What about credit cards? What would be, I don't want to ask each of you guys this. You got $25,000 in credit card debt right now. You're paying 25% interest on this money. Do you pay that off first, or do you go invest in real estate with it? What do you guys think? Alan?
I think credit card is the one thing, the consumer debt, that you got to pay off first, only because that's going to allow you to get better terms on a mortgage. And that can spiral out of control. And Dave Ramsey calls that playing with snakes. That is the one debt I would say, focus on your credit cards, and then everything else buy an asset to pay for it.
Especially, I would second that because credit card debt's typically ridiculously high. You can't have this one-size-fits-all solution that most people find comfort in life. Well, should I just pay off all my debt? Well, all your debt could be a 1.5% interest rate on student loan versus an 18% interest rate on your credit card. So I think there's some common sense that should go into it. And Alan, you made a great point. There's a passive investment to paying off credit card debt because it will help you get a mortgage. It will improve your DTI and your credit score, which allows you to go buy real estate. And the last little cherry I'll throw on the top of this is when you house hack, which all of us here are huge, disciples of house hacking, you're also getting rid of something. You're getting rid of your mortgage payment or your rent that you're going to have if you're not owning real estate. And saving $1,000 on what you would have made towards a house payment, you're not getting taxed on money you save. It's almost the equivalent of getting $1,300 or $1,400 in cash flow after you look at a lot of the taxes.
If I get at one more piece of the credit card thing, I'll say so if it was just about the money, I would actually be different than both what you guys said, and I would say I'd rather have somebody go and invest in real estate than pay off $25,000. But I'm gonna before people take that and run with it. The reason I say that is because the knowledge gained from actually taking action to invest in real estate is going to benefit you way more than $25,000 in your life. The reason, though, then I would still side with you guys on this point, and I think we all would agree to this, is like when you have $25,000 in credit card debt or $50,000, that is a symptom of a greater problem most of the time. And everyone here that has that is yelling at the car stereo right now, saying that's not true. I had this unique experience, or I had this medical bill, I had something. But there's usually still something in your life that made that happen that I think most people need to fix. Again, there is the rare, like you had a crazy medical thing that just had to go on credit card. But I know for me, there was a point where I was like $50,000 or $60,000 in credit card debt. And that was maybe even more at one point. Like, and some of that was house flip stuff, but some of that was because like I was spending $1,000 more every single month than I was making. So by paying off credit card debt, you change your identity from one who is living in the moment and living for your wants and your desires to somebody who lives with intention and with purpose and with goals in mind. And so that it makes you a different type of person, which will then benefit you on real estate. So anyway, just some thoughts there. Anything you want to add on that?
Yeah, I think that's like the training course to handling money and understanding leverage. Like if you have the willpower to pay off your credit card bills, regardless of the amount, you're going to have the willpower. It's that exact same willpower to be successful in real estate investing. Like it's the same, mindset, really.
So maybe put it a different way. Like I've often heard the phrase, and I love this, is if you can't donate, if you can't like tithe or charity, or whatever, 10% of your income when you're making $2,000 a month, you won't do it when you're making $20,000 a month or $200,000 a month. I would say that same principle applies. If you can't live within your means at $3,000 a month, you're not living with your means at $30,000 a month either, because it is a mental thing, not a math thing.
And I think the thing with credit cards is like most other debt, student loans, car notes, you're paying some of the principal. But credit cards make it really easy to just pay the interest, so you're never getting ahead. So that's, if you wanted to take my house fire approach, go buy a house, but make sure that cash flow pays more than the minimum, more than the interest payment, that you're actually paying down the principal. Otherwise, you're never going to get out of that credit card debt. You're just on a treadmill.
There's a lot of variables to this. There's also the side of, well, if you pay off your credit card, are you just going to go run up the debt again once it's been paid off, because you can't be trusted with credit cards? So
you don't know how many times that, like I worked at a bank for a year and a half back in the day. I was like a banker that gave people credit cards and open checking accounts and all that. And numerous times I would find a way to use like home equity. Like I'd get a home equity line of credit and we'd pay off their credit cards. And I was a good banker. So I'd work with them, and I was like, I had all these ideas on how I could help them. And then 3 months later they'd come in and they're like, well, what else can you do for me now? I'm back to my $35,000 in credit card debt again. And I'm like, we just did a refi in your house to pay it off. Like, what are you doing? I don't. Yeah. And it sucks. And it just goes back to like that debt is often a mental thing then. And like, especially consumer debt, it's a mental game. It's a mental sickness and illness for many people. So you got any advice, Alan, on, and I want to go back to your story here in a second, but any advice on people like getting into that mentality where they can sacrifice more now, where they can live more within their means? The people who are struggling with that right now, what do you got to say to them?
I always trick my brain. I'm like, hey, Alan, why don't I give myself a gift in 10 years? What would that gift be? And, it's like, oh, well, maybe it's no credit card debt. Okay, let's pay future Alan. Gift. President Allen's got to work to gift future Alan that credit card debt. Okay, well, let's make up a plan. $200 a month. Go here and go there. Maybe it's. I would go to when I had a day job, I had the HR take some of my 25% of my savings or my income and automatically deposit to one bank. And then 50% it would go to another bank across town that I didn't have access to. And the other 25% would go to like retirement accounts. And then what I would do is, it wasn't in my account. It wasn't in my daily account. 50% of my paycheck was just going to this bank on the other side of Manhattan, and it was a pain in the butt for me to go to. And I didn't want to create an online login, didn't want to have the debit cards. I actually had to go there in person. And then all I did was I give my gift to myself every January 1st. The bank, whenever the bank would open, January 2nd or 3rd, I would walk over there, say, how much do I have in my account? Because I need to go buy a house with it. And that's what I did for my first one was, here's $10,000. Okay, my budget is $10,000. That's 10% of $100,000. The next year, it was $25,000. Okay, let me go buy a house with that. And, it was that's I would just play these games to be like, oh, hey, good looking out for you, Alan. Thanks for doing that. And so I knew if it was in my account, I'd go spend it. I'd do something dumb. I'd go drink, with my buddies. But if I'm like, hey guys, sorry, I only got $20 tonight, but I'll go out. It was fun. I didn't feel like I missed out anything. I didn't feel like I was living in poverty. And then those beers and those happy hours, like, how are you doing this, Alan? How are you buying these houses? And it's like, oh, well, I hide the money from myself, and pull it out once a year.
Dude, I play that exact same game in so many areas of my life. Like money, like the same thing. If I set it aside, I mean, the government does it too, right? Government takes the tax money from your paycheck first because they know that then you're not going to spend it. So I do the same thing. I have so many random accounts. In fact, true story. This is going to be like a weird flex, but the other day, my finance guy, Micah, says who helps with all my finance stuff. He gets a letter from the Bank of Hawaii, and they say your account is going to start charging you $10 a month if you don't use it. You haven't used it in a year. They're going to charge you $10 a month or whatever. And I'm like, so he's like, hey Brandon, what do you want to do with this account? I don't even know what account it is. It must be your personal one there. And I said, I don't have a personal account at Bank of Hawaii. He's like, well, you got this letter. So I was like, well, you look into it. So he calls up the banker friend that we have at the branch, finds out there's $25,000 sitting in this thing that's been there for at least 3 years. Because I said I opened it over on Oahu. I have no memory of this at all. I know I lived in the town where that was at, but I must have gotten money from something. I sold something and I put it into that. I opened a bank account and was like, hey, this will be for my future. And then totally forgot about it. It's like finding $20 in your jeans pocket.
That's what I was just going to say. It's like putting money in your jacket pocket and leaving it there all winter, and then you get back out. I'm so glad I'm not the only one that does this. This happens to me all the time. I just feel so good. You probably took out a loan at Bank of Hawaii and funded it with some money and then sold the property that the loan was
I must have done,
yeah.
But the point being, I hide money sometimes like that, maybe a little too well, so that I won't spend it. I've used this analogy before, but I'll say it real quick. There's a movie called Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. It's a Harry Potter spinoff, right? In there's this creature called the Akami, or I don't know if I'm saying it right, but that expands to whatever size you get it. And so if you put it into, so you put it into a big room, it expands to the size of the room. But you can put it in a teacup and it shrinks to the size of a teacup. And I always say our budgets are like that, like our finances. If you have $2,000 in your checking account, you're going to spend $2,000 in your checking account. We all just do it. So the government's like, well, I'm going to take that out first. So by limiting the size of your container, then that little Akami of your spending will just fit inside that, and you won't even notice it. So taking that $200-$300 a month and setting it aside, you won't notice it. I mean, maybe the first month you'll be like, oh, that's a little weird, but you just don't notice it when you set it aside. So anyway, I love that. Oh, by the way, that also works with time. Think about it. It's like Parkinson's law. If you had a whole day to finish some project, you're going to take a day to do it.
Oh, true.
But if you give yourself, no, I've got 1 hour to finish this thing. Or if you say, I'm going to buy a real estate deal this year in 2021, yeah, you might do it by the end of the year. But if you said, I'm going to buy a property in the next 30 days, oh, I'd love to see the action you take in 30 days because you gave yourself a smaller container. You play tricks with yourself. It works.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, totally. I always give myself constraints and deadlines. I find myself getting way more creative and way more productive because I can hem and haw for 90 days on a property. But that's what's great about 1031 exchanges. You have a time limit, right? And so then you make a decision. But, if you just do that, you pretend like everything's a 1031 exchange and I got 30 days to invest this, or, hey, whatever I have in this account on January 1st, I got to buy a house in January because the faster I buy a house, the faster I can start saving for the second house, and those sort of time frames.
So I love this. Tell us a little bit more about the subsequent houses that you bought using these little mental hacks that you're playing with yourself.
Yeah. So, personally, I've grown my portfolio. I've been doing this for 20 years. And I wrote this down. I had to do research before I came on here because it changes every week because I'm buying and selling things. But currently I have about 69 units personally for about a total of 8 million, 48 single family homes. 21 units are duplexes, triplexes, and quads. And then with some partners, I've got another $20 million worth of property, 94 units, mostly commercial, ranging from 12 to 28 units, and some storefronts. And so and David, you might know this as a realtor, opportunity starts presenting itself. I've always been an opportunity buyer. I've had clients, find a deal. When I'm first starting out, I didn't have money, but I could find a deal, and then I'd go find people with money. Now I'm on the other side of the coins. Some of my clients and friends, they find the deal, and they come to me with money, and I'm like the other side of, oh, okay, let's buy these deals together. And, sometimes I take clients and I'm like, hey guys, this is the house you want to buy. I know it's not the perfect kitchen. It's not the perfect bathroom, but you're on a double lot, and this lot, it comes with this lot that's landlocked, and because of that, you can do XYZ. You can build a pool, and it doesn't go against your FAR. You can build a second story here where all the other homes can't. There's just maybe this is like not imaginary lottery ticket. This is real life lottery ticket right here that no one else is seeing the value. You need to buy it, and a lot of times they can't pull the trigger, and so I say sleep on it. If you still don't want it tomorrow, I'm going to buy it. And that's sort of what happens is I wasn't looking for that property. I wasn't looking for that sort of, gold mine, but because I'm out on the road, hitting the road, taking clients out, looking for myself, I find these things and I'm like, you should buy it. Okay. I'm going to buy it, and that's what I love about real estate investing is really kind of finding those opportunities to maximize value. And it's not, it's not always just the fix up the kitchen kind of thing.
Explain, where are you buying today? You're not in New York City anymore, right? You moved down to Atlanta, is that right?
Yeah, so I'm in Atlanta. I was born and raised in Atlanta, and after spending 13 years in Brooklyn, came back to Atlanta, and so I just sort of 1031 most of my portfolio, or all my portfolio, eventually to Atlanta, and started continuing to invest in and around Atlanta. The winters don't freeze my pipes here. That's what I've learned. Yeah. We've got termites here, which New York didn't have a problem with, but our winters do not freeze pipes. So that's been a sort of a relief. And I did recently venture out about an hour outside of Atlanta, and this goes hand in hand with one of my clients who he found these properties. They were individually listed on our MLS. It's really hard to sell like a single family portfolio, at least in our MLS. It's either a single family or you can sell a commercial property. But if you've got a package of 30, 40 homes, you either sell one house and you have to give it really crazy value and everyone ignores it, or you have to sell them all, list them all individually. So I had a client come to me. I've been showing him investment properties. We lost some bids. It didn't work out. And he came to me and he said, Alan, there's this town is hours south from here, and they're selling the homes for $30,000 each. And so he would look at it, and no, I'm not looking at $30,000 homes, but in the realtor notes, it said, must buy 40 of these, here are the other MLS numbers. And so these have just been sitting on the market for like a year because everyone with a $30,000 budget, it shows up, but no one has a $1 million budget, right? Who's looking at these properties. And so, this turned out into a really good deal in that no one's going to, it's really difficult to finance a property that's below $50,000. There's a federal law that closing costs and attorney fees can't be a certain percentage of a property value. Usually $50,000 is that threshold for a mortgage company to give you loans. And so we tried to get loans, and I said, okay, I'll partner with you. And no one's lending on it. So we went to the seller and said, the only way you're going to sell these is seller financing. And so he understood that. He's been in the business. This guy who's retiring, accumulated 40 homes. And he gave us 15-year seller note with 10% down payment at 7% interest. And it was still cash flowing after that. And it was just a no-brainer. And so the total package was $1.3 million at the end. So we had to come up with $130,000, which is great to buy a $1.3 million portfolio that was seller financed. And it was cash flowing on day one. And now 2 years later, that is worth $2.5 million. So, wow. But what happened was, because my name as a realtor showed up on 30 listings in this small town, every single wholesaler in that town, every single real estate agent in that town, whenever they had a listing, they're like, Alan, you've had a buyer for the last 40 properties in this town. Would your buyer be interested in this? Would your buyer be interested in that? And I bought another 10, 15 properties off market that way, just because they're like, whoever Alan is representing, they're buying these properties.
Yeah, this guy's a shark. This is great. All right. Yeah. Can you explain for those who maybe have never heard the term before, who are brand new to this, what is seller financing and how does that work? What are the benefits of it? Like, explain that concept.
Yeah, sure. So it's basically a bank, and the seller is going to be your bank. So instead of a bank going through your finances, making sure you're putting 20% down, are 25% down, that you have the debts to income ratio, all the formulas and criteria they use to purchase your home, the seller's going to say, hey, I want to lend you the home. Basically, give me 10%, and I'm going to be the mortgager. I'm going to give you the 90% in a mortgage, and you just pay that over time. There are some benefits to the seller for doing that. One is he couldn't sell his property otherwise, but two, he can do installment sales or other sort of rolling in this income. So instead of one big payment, he can kind of, I'm not exactly sure the in and outs, but there is some sort of benefit for him
the
earning
taxes are a bit less.
Over time. And three, it doesn't go, honestly, it doesn't go on my credit score. I bought it in an LLC. It's separated, so when I go get a mortgage somewhere else, it's not even on the radar for anyone. And so it's what we talked at the beginning of the episode: leveraging your money as much as possible, spreading out risks across 50 homes. If 10 are vacant, I'm still cash flowing. Kind of thing. And it's really. If you're trying to get in real estate, you have no money, that's your best opportunity. It's really, really the best. And it's usually cheaper than a hard money loan as well.
I don't think people think enough about seller financing. I know I don't, but and because it doesn't work all the time, and so people just never bother to ask for it.
A seller has to have their house paid off in cash to do seller financing. So you're going to find these opportunities, finding retiring investors, typically guys who have acquired a significant portfolio over time. Their kids have no interest in real estate, and then they're willing to offload it to you.
Yeah, and when I wrote that book a long time ago, the book on investing in real estate with no and low money down, and when I was writing that, I was doing some research on the seller financing because there's a whole chapter on that. And what I found at the time, I don't know if it still holds true, but I bet it does. It was like a third of all homes didn't have a mortgage. And so that was a way bigger number than I imagined. So it's possible that a third, and I know a lot of people buy houses for cash today. It's a big thing to buy for cash. So it's very possible to still get seller financing. In fact, I was just talking to a buddy last night on my house here, and he just got a huge deal locked up here in Maui. And it's like a $1.3 million property, but the seller offered to carry. It was like he could do seller financing, but only up to $800,000 because he had a little bit of a mortgage to pay off. And so my buddy's like, okay, so he's going to do that. He's going to get that, and then he brought in a partner to fund the rest. So the partner's bringing in I don't know what it is, $400,000 or $500,000. The seller's carrying the $800,000 or whatever that number is, and then together they're just going to flip the house. And so this guy is going to do it for no money down. This huge $1 million plus deal. So it's definitely a tool to have in your arsenal and to learn about. I mean, some guys like Gabriel Hamill, who we've had on the show here, that's his entire strategy. That's all he does is seller financing. He just kills it. Yeah, it's powerful.
And there's ways to look these up in tax records. Typically, I know there's strategies to see who's owned their own for over 30 years. They're probably paid it off. You can search for out-of-state landlords, or if their mailing address doesn't match the property address. There's all these tools out there if you really want to go knock on some doors or do some direct mailers. But that's a fast way to get into real estate with no money.
100%. That's so good. Yeah, very cool. All right, so you bought this portfolio of 40 some houses, and you made. I mean, it sounds like you made over $1 million. Or you're selling it now, right? It's over $1 million off one.
Yeah, so I've got it under contract, and so I'm looking to 1031 it now, which is a tax deferment. If I sold it, I would get a lot of. I would have to pay capital gains taxes. 1031 allows me to avoid that or defer that and roll it into the next property. And so what I've been really interested in, and I've always tried to push myself, I always try to buy something bigger, a product type I've never bought before whenever I do a 1031. And so I'm looking into commercial and specifically something called a net cash flow triple net lease. And what that means, so triple net is commercial properties that the tenant pays for everything, the improvements, the structure, the roof, any repairs, the rent, the mortgage, or if there is a mortgage, the rent covers the mortgage, and insurance, property taxes. It's just hands off. I know my expenses are just going to be my mortgage payment. So a zero cash flow triple net basically is exactly what it sounds. I'm not going to make any profit. The tenant pays the mortgage directly. And also, these exist in AAA bonded tenants, the best of the best. You have your CVS, your Walgreens, Dunkin' Donuts, Chase Bank. They're a corporate entity is signing on the lease, and they sign a lease for 20, 25 years. So even if the property goes dark, which means they close it down, they're still going to pay the 20-year guarantee lease. And so on these triple nets that are zero cash flow, you can get into them with 10% down, 15% down, which is about half of what you typically need. You usually need 30 to 40% down to buy a triple net property. And the way it works is the tenant pays off the mortgage, and I'm not going to make any money for 20 years. There's a 20-year mortgage, 20-year amortization, 20-year lease. But in 20 years, I'm going to have this huge paid-off property. I leveraged it, my 1031 proceeds with a 10% down payment. Also, during that time period, I can write off losses on that property. So as a real estate professional, I'm getting other rental income and cash flow, and this property is going to earn me losses, even though it's not a loss, it's a loss on paper. Then that saves me on taxes on my property, and also allows me to do. All these properties have recapture when you purchase, which means if I put more than 10 or 15% down, they instantly give me back that 1031 proceeds back to me cash free, almost like it's a cash out refi. So I can access my 1031 proceeds without paying taxes on it.
Fascinating. Yeah, this is something I don't think we've actually talked about on the show before, but I'm more and more intrigued by this idea of owning the triple net lease stuff. Because of like the lack of management, it's a lot easier. I'm sure going from a 40, 50 houses that you were handling into one of these things. It's gonna be night and day difference for your management, I'm assuming.
And I'm giving my gift to myself for 20 years. I mean, that's the way I look at it. I don't need money now. I don't need the cash flow now. I've got all my other bills still covering the bills in my life. But in 20 years, I'm gonna have this paid off, whatever triple net corporate entity who will probably sign another 20-year lease, and that'll be pure cash flow. Yeah, why wouldn't I do that?
There's some genius here that I want to highlight because
all of
you're
it's
looking
genius,
at this.
David.
Yes,
all of
absolutely.
Yeah,
well,
okay.
Alan, the minute we brought you on the podcast,
yes,
it was
okay. Thank you.
like a halo that just shines out from your entire audio there. You're not just looking at cash flow, and that's what I wanted to get at. Cash flow is what brings a lot of real estate investors into the door, because cash flow can replace your job. Cash flow can get you out of a bind. Cash flow can pay off bills. Everything that we talked about, it's great. It doesn't mean that's where you should stay forever. And cash flow, in my opinion, is oftentimes like training wheels. It keeps you from falling off the bike. It teaches you how to ride it, but it limits how fast you're ever going to go if all you're looking at is cash flow. Alan, you're describing a deal that will net you no cash flow and could save you theoretically 7 figures in taxes if you're making it in other areas as a real estate professional. That's a huge, huge win on a deal that other people might just ignore because they're not looking at it from your perspective. So I appreciate you sharing this side. I'm going to highlight, we're not advocating people buy non-cash flowing properties if they're not in a strong financial position. But as you do well with real estate and your financial position becomes stronger, real estate has all these really cool techniques and tricks that you can use to grow the wealth you've already created relatively safely.
All right, 2 more quick questions before we move on to the deal deep dive. First of all, what's your management life look like? Did you manage all those 40, 50 houses yourself, all that stuff, or do you have a management team? Do you hire it out? What's that look like?
So I started a property management company, and I realized really quickly all my time was to managing the properties and not focusing on finding new deals or figuring out how to do a deal analysis or figuring out how to finance it. And so then I grew a property management company, and then I slowed it down and offloaded all the properties so I could directly focus more on acquiring new properties. So I've now outsourced across 3 different property managers depending on where my properties are.
Okay. And so then do you say the majority of your time these days is spent as an agent because the property management is looking after all your stuff?
Yeah, I would say that, that's probably 75 to 85% of my day is real estate agent related, which I enjoy. It gets me talking to people, buyers, home sellers, and searching for those treasure chests out there that are just waiting to be discovered.
Do you think people should get the real estate license when they're getting into investing?
I do not. I think I side with David on this. There's no really cost savings. Well, let me rephrase that. If you are going to be a real estate agent that helps other real estate investors, 100%. And there's benefits to that, because what happens is other real estate agents call me and say, hey, I've got this quadruplex coming in the market. I know you have a lot of quadruplex buyers. Do you want it? And I'll pass it on to my clients. If they say no, I might buy it. So those opportunities are great because I'm a real estate agent, but I am never, and I do the same to other real estate agents who I know have buyers and sellers in those markets, but I'll never call that one-off person who's an investor if he's not my client, right? That's just not the best use of my time. So, I find that as a real estate agent, if I'm dealing with another real estate investor who's investing with themselves, it's a more difficult process. It's not as easy as they think it is. I have to explain the contract to them over and over again, or how things work, and they know a lot about real estate, but they don't know a whole lot about a real estate transaction. And if you're not doing, maybe you're doing it once or twice a year, you're not going to get the reps in like a realtor would doing 100 deals a year. Yeah.
Alan, you just helped me realize why I don't like this question. It hit me like a lightning bolt right now. Why don't we say the same thing to every other component of investing? Are you going to get your contractor's license when you become a real estate investor? Are you going to become a CPA when you become a real estate investor? Are you going to become a full-time property manager? Like, it's only with being an agent that this question ever comes up, and you're highlighting the exact point. Is getting the license doesn't make you good at it. Getting a license that says you know how to be a construction worker, you have a contractor's license, doesn't mean you're skilled at doing the work. It takes reps, and most people don't want to put those in.
Yeah. And like you said, like I tried to, when I first got into this, I met every plumber, every electrician, every handyman, just looked over the shoulder, like, I'm going to learn how to do this. And it always cost me twice as much when I tried to do it myself. Twice as long. And I've learned what we're doing is leveraging skill sets, right? Instead of leveraging money to buy a house, I'm going to leverage other people's skill sets who do this full time. And that they're going to do a better job than someone who's doing it part time or learning as we go.
There we go. Awesome, man. Well, love it. Love to hear your story and where you've been and what you're doing. But we're not done with yet today's show, because first we have to get to the deal deep dive. This is the part of the...
go ahead. I wanted to do that deep voice thing with you guys.
We
know
what?
what?
Want you to show us up, Alan.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, we knew you had a deeper, more manly voice.
You're like straight Batman.
Deep dive.
Time to dig into one particular deal that you've done to find some details on the deal. And it's a question and a half, 1.5. What type of property was it, and where was it located?
This was in Brooklyn, New York. This was actually 5 doors down from that duplex that I bought to house hack my second one, the House of Clowns with comedians.
Okay, and how did you find it? Were you just walking down the street and saw this house 5 doors down?
Yeah, I am the nosiest person ever, and I purposely... Every time I walked to the subway, I would walk a different direction to the subway. And just because I wanted to go down different blocks, different streets, and every house is under renovation, I stick my head in, hey, what's going on here, guys? Is this going to be a rental? Is this going to be for sale? I didn't really have money back, I was 25 years old. I was just curious, like, what's happening? What are you guys doing? And so this was actually the opposite direction of the subway that I would normally walk in. But I walked in there and I saw a contractor fixing it up. And so I poked my head in, hey, what's your plans with this? And, real estate investor talking to real estate investor, I ended up talking to him more and more over time. And, he gave me a price, and I said, you know what, I'd be interested. Let me see if I can find a way to buy this, because I didn't have any money, didn't have any cash to buy it. And, I built up rapport, and this was going to be a finished, renovated duplex, nicer than the duplex I lived in 5 doors down.
Question number 3. Did you ever consider forming a band called 5 Doors Down to compete with 3 Doors Down? Okay. How much was the property? How much was the property? That was not a real question. How much was the property?
The property was, he wanted $1 million for it, and I believe I negotiated him down to the $990 on it because it was off market. And so I got $10,000 discount.
Sir, that's what I was going to say. That's why they call you Mr. Chris Voss, like the FBI negotiator right there.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
We're supposed to ask how you negotiated that price. Is it because it was off market? So you said, hey, you're saving money on the realtor fees, so give it to me.
No, this is how it went down. I went back to my wife and I said, hey, we're buying this property. We're no way we can lose money. We're buying it for $1 million. And she's like, I can't, we're not paying $1 million for that. And I said, well, you go talk to him. And so she came back and said, I got him down to 990.
There we go.
Here's another quick tip for everybody. Something about that $1 million mark is such a big deal in everyone's head. I cannot tell you how many deals we've been trying to get under contract with buyers, and the seller nobody could get it under contract until I came back and said, let's give them $1 million, but ask for $40,000 credit. Done.
Yeah.
Right off the bat. Something about that just $1 million number. $1 million.
Yeah. People love the million number. All right. How did you fund it? How do you get $1 million for this thing?
I had no cash. And so what I did is I went and got a HELOC on my duplex, the House of Clowns duplex. And it came in at a crazy number. Honestly, way more than I thought it was worth. But, I'm not going to complain. I'm going to take their appraisal. And based on that, I got a $300,000 HELOC credit line. So with that, I took $300,000, and for me to be able to buy this, I had to put 30% down. So there goes my entire HELOC, 30% down, and mortgage the rest. So it was 100% financed duplex. And why I loved it so much was that even with that 100% financing, I was going to cash flow $2,000 a month. And it wasn't the duplex. It was right underneath the BQE, which is this raised interstate. I live 5 doors down, so I was used to the noise. It didn't bother me. It sounded like an ocean after a while, just the steady white noise. Probably like living in Hawaii, I would imagine. And
exactly, like under an interstate.
yeah, under the interstate. And I can't believe I paid $1 million for this duplex, but it just made sense on paper. I was like, there's no risk. We're going to, $2,000 a month. That entire $2,000, I'm not paying myself. I'm going to pay down this HELOC, which is an interest-only loan that had no principal associated with it. My HELOC payment, I want to say, was like $600, $700. So the other $1,200 was going to work that down. I had a plan that we're just going to pay this off over time. So it was $3 million is the way I look at it.
Okay. Next question. What did you do with this duplex?
So I rented it out for 4 years, made, like I said, a really good cash flow on it. And then when I moved to Atlanta, I saw what $1 million could buy in Atlanta. I could actually get more cash flow and I could buy more property. So I decided to sell it so I could do a 1031 exchange. And I sold it. And this is what happens in New York. This happened to me a few times in New York. When I sell a property over $1 million, you eventually have celebrities that come by it. Barbara Corcoran from Shark Tank bought my first $1 million property in Red Hook.
No way.
So she bought that for her investment, and that gave me confidence to know what I'm doing. If wait a minute, if Barbara's buying my stuff, should I not be selling, or am I doing the right thing by renovating and selling to her? And I sold to some of like Spike Lee's right-hand men and guys like that. But this property was sold to Christina Ricci. She's an actress. Played Wednesday in the Addams Family, and usually has sort of a goth character role kind of thing. And I feel like I can say that. I signed a non-disclosure at the time, but then that was so she could immediately the day of the closing set out in a press release about it, that she bought it. And who knows if she still owns it now. This was probably 10 years ago, but it was kind of cool to meet her at the closing table. And again, I always like, wait, she's buying it. Am I making the wrong decision? Am I doing the right thing? But I was able to buy 3 quadruplexes in Atlanta with that 1031 exchange. So it seemed to make sense.
I love it. I love how it just demonstrates that you like how one deal can lead into another bigger deal, better deal, which can lead into another bigger, better deals, plural. And that's how you build. I call it the stack in real estate, right? It's like you start with 1 and you stack 2, then you stack 4 and 8, and you grow exponentially, and your cash flow increases with that, and your equity increases. You can take it from one to the next, and then you bump it up again because you fix up that property. And just the whole world of real estate is just so cool because it does that, and that was a great story. So what lessons did you learn from this deal? And I should say, what was the outcome? What did you actually totally make on it then? And what lessons did you learn?
Yeah, that was the first time I made $1 million on one property. So that was a pure $1 million 1031 exchange money that I was able to put on as down payments for the other properties in Atlanta.
What I love about this is that you didn't trade a duplex for $1 million. You traded a duplex for 3 more properties with $1 million in equity, so you never felt like you were rich, right? Like we were talking about earlier.
Yeah. Like I always like playing this game. Like ask someone, what would you do with $1 million? And most people are like, I'd buy a Ferrari, a Lamborghini, I'd go on this trip. You ask a real estate investor and be like, oh, I'd buy $4 million worth of property with that. That's 25% down payment, right? Like I don't get enjoyment buying myself those things. I'd rather go buy a property and then.
Like, then let your property buy those things, like we said earlier in the podcast.
Yeah, right. And it's worth noting that I had no insight that that 4 years was going to create $1 million equity. Like I bought the property based on the mechanics of a deal, looking at it on paper. This is going to cash flow me more money than I anticipated, but it was going to be a profitable venture. I was happy with $2,000 a month. And then the Brooklyn Nets stadium came, the New Jersey Nets.
And that was your lottery ticket.
Yeah, that was
like
my lottery ticket.
Right?
Yeah, I had no insight on this. I'm not some genius. There's so many dumb idiots running around the real estate world because there's such a low bar of entry. But I want to be one of those idiots. So let's just get lucky.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
You assisted enough tackles, you're going to come up with a fumble if you're in the right place enough.
I was going to say, you can't win the lottery if you don't play the lottery, right? So and the great thing about real estate is that you are playing a lottery that pays you money every time you buy a lottery ticket, no matter what. And then sometimes that lottery ticket goes to 10x. But most of the time it just pays you a nice monthly income, and you're like, this is great. Like, what a great business. I love this game. This is so good. All right. Moving on. Any last final lessons you can pull out of that deal?
Well, I think a lot of real estate investors would say $1 million is too big. Like, that's scary. I think a lot of real estate investors would say, I don't have the money. And then the deal dies there, right? And so I was like, I got to find the money. I tried to find partners, and no one was interested in buying a property underneath the duplex or underneath the interstate. And I tried to reach out. I didn't have a huge network of rich people. I was like 25, 26 years old. I was calling my ex-girlfriend's father and saying, hey, you want to buy this thing? I couldn't get any bites. And so I just looked inwards and be like, where could I pull equity out of the properties I do own? And I thought I'd get $100,000 off that HELOC line, but I got $300,000, and that's all I needed to get the deal done. And so it's perseverance, really, and just not giving up and trying and throwing everything at the wall and see what sticks.
Awesome, man. Love it. Well, let's move on to the last segment of the show. It's time for our famous four. Think of that. You got in on that one. That was great. The famous four is a part of the show where we ask the same 4 questions every week to every guest, and we're going to throw them at you right now. So first one, favorite real estate investing book, other than your own, of course, which is one of my favorite real estate investing books.
Every book you've ever mentioned on here, I bought and read multiple times. So there's one book that I missed, but it's called Evicted by Matthew Desmond. And what it is as we're in a privileged class. If you're able to afford more than one property, you've unlocked an achievement level you should be proud of. And we have tenants and landlords like telling about, I don't want to hear your story from the tenants, because every tenant has a story. And a lot of times you're trying to cut through the BS. And was that a real story or not? So Evicted is by a New York Times reporter, Matthew Desmond, and he lives with 3 tenants in Milwaukee, low income. One's in a mobile home park, one's in the inner city, and I forget what the third one is, but follows them around and really gets the truth of their story. And so what happens behind the scenes is really, really interesting to understand what your tenants are going through sometimes. Even though the story they tell you might be different, it's mostly because they're embarrassed by the true story. And I just found it very rewarding to understand, we're all in an ecosystem, and our view from landlord to tenant can be, muddled, but it was really interesting to see the tenant to landlord view and really understand where they're coming from. So I'd recommend that read for anyone. I couldn't put it down.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I think that won a Pulitzer Prize. Yeah, so that was a big book. So I haven't read it though. I'm gonna pick it up. Thanks, dude. All right, number 2, David.
Number 2. What's your favorite business book?
So same sort of thing, business book. I've read them all. Probably E-Myth's my best, but I want to throw out there, it's sort of a business book. It's called The Color of Law. And really it's about segregation. Housing practices created segregation for different income groups and ethnicities. And we all know housing is a great way to generate wealth, but if the government strips that from you through blocking out from lending certain neighborhoods, rewarding builders to build white neighborhoods, obviously it's really difficult to get your family on the wealth chain of real estate investing. And really it put marginalized groups 30, 50 years behind a lot of other privileged classes. And I recommend The Color of Law by Richard Rothstein as well as a book to read to understand that.
Very cool. Awesome, man. Well, thanks for the recommendation. Number 3.
What are some of your hobbies?
So I was a basketball guy like you, David, growing up. And so I'm coaching my kids' basketball. And I got to say, I really enjoy it, but I'm a terrible coach. I always appreciated those coaches that just had command of practice. And, my practices are run with all the kids are pantsing each other and slapping each other. And I'm like, time to get in the defensive stance. Yep. And you know what? No one learns a damn thing, but I think we're all having fun.
I love it, man. All right, last question from me. What do you think separates successful real estate investors from all those who give up, fail, or never get started?
So personally, for me, it's my pain of regret outweighs my pain of failing. So I never wanted to be that coulda, shoulda, woulda guy. I didn't want to be like, oh man, I wanted to get in real estate, but I should have bought that duplex 10 years ago. I didn't like those war stories. I didn't look at, I didn't want to be that guy. I wanted to be the guy that said, oh, I bought that, $1 million duplex and I failed. That, I didn't want that. I'd rather be that than someone who didn't try, who didn't put in the effort, who was scared of it. I'd rather try and fail. I believe in myself. And the second reason I think most people don't get into real estate is Georgia football. And what I mean by that is people are always like, hey, let's talk real estate. Okay. Hey, let's Saturday at noon. You want to grab lunch? Sorry, man, I got Georgia football game to go to. Okay, all right, well, that's when I'm free. If you want to get into real estate, and it could be Dallas Cowboys football, it could be whatever, the Brooklyn Nets basketball. It's prioritizing, and it's really kind of if you really want to be a real estate investor, you'll put that above whatever The Bachelor or whatever it is on TV, right? If you really, really want these dreams, and so it's look up on yourself. What are you putting in front of your dreams right now? Is what TV show? And it's always something on Netflix or whatever it is. So those are two things that I sort of approach real estate.
Do you still feel the same about Jerry Springer?
Jerry Springer, I don't even know if that's on anymore. That's I don't think. Definitely didn't make my parents proud by being on that show, but that was a goal of mine when I was in college, and I lived that dream, making up a story to be on Jerry Springer, because one, it paid for my spring break. They flew me and my friends out to Chicago, paid for our hotels, our food, and everything to me is, how can I get this paid for? Back then it wasn't a house; it was a reality show.
Did they know you made up the story, or did they think you were completely legit?
They tried to trip us up a lot of times, and they threatened us, and they said, we're going to sue you for $80,000 if you bust out laughing on the show, because it cost us $80,000 to produce a show, which really honestly scared us. Yeah. So I went to my best friend and I said, listen, Jeff, I'm going to punch you in the face, because if I don't punch you in the face, we're going to get sued for $80,000. He's like, yeah, Alan, I know. And so we got in this huge fight. I got to punch. Well, he dodged my punch. I guess I shouldn't have told him it was coming. But Steve tackled me, brought me to the ground. But then right then and there, the producers made us fly home on separate flights. So I think they took us seriously. Yeah.
Oh, awesome, man. Love it. I've been wanting to ask you that question for about 15 years now, because I read $1 million for 30. All right. With that said, we got to close up shop. David, why don't you ask the final question and then get us out of here?
Alan, last question of the day. Where can people find out more about you?
Yeah, sure. So I have a website, and all my social media presence is the House of AC. My initials are AC. My friends call me AC. And if you Google the House of AC, you'll learn a lot about air conditionings. So apparently that was very bad branding choice on my end. But yeah, thehouseofac.com. And I'm creating 2 podcasts, one about house fire and one called Agent Upgrade, about how to upgrade your real estate agent business.
Cool. And the book is called? House
The
Fire?
book is called House Fire, fire being financial independence and retire early, how to be a red-hot real estate millionaire with a wealth of time and money to burn. That is out right now. Learn how to pay your bills, kill your bills with House Fire.
Awesome, man. Appreciate you coming on the show. This has been a dream come true, so thank you.
Well, it's been my dream as well, and thanks for having me. It's been great, and I hope I lived up to my 10x. Maybe that was a 5x effort of guest, but
You 20x'd it, man. 20x'd
awesome.
it.
Glad to hear it.
All right. This is David Green for Brandon, the wisdom of Dave Ramsey, and the entertainment value of Jerry Springer Turner. Signing off.
You're listening to Bigger Pockets Radio, simplifying real estate for investors large and small. If you're here looking to learn about real estate investing without all the hype, you're in the right place. Stay tuned and be sure to join the millions of others who have benefited from BiggerPockets.com, your home for real estate investing online.